Early bird's getting the worm today.
Very nice.
I really like Zoom's webinar software, but the only thing that's a bummer is because you can't see everyone's faces. I sort of have to create imaginary people like emojis for everyone who's in the attendee room. So thank you all. I see you joining us. I'm really excited to meet you all today. Some familiar names and faces, probably more to Darren, Sean, and Michael. Very timely bunch. Give everyone just a few minutes to join us. In the meantime, I'm going to open my little chat bot. So if anyone has any questions going into our conversation, has any issues, if your AV is not working, if you want to shoot me an emoji so I know you're here, please feel free to do that.
So Jess, I just put in the chat a little hello from SLOW, San Luis Obispo.
Ooh, I'd never heard that acronym before, Dan. I love it. You're pretty fast, considering. Boston, there's the East Coast, Midwest, the Twin Cities. There we are. Hello. I'm in Detroit, which I know is where everyone else is wishing they were today. A beautiful day full of snow and rain. Sunny South Carolina, Tamika. Of course, it's always the sun. I feel like follows you wherever you are. Hey, Norma.
Yeah, nice to see the national audience. Very cool.
Little Rock, cool, in Tampa. Everyone's just bragging about their weather at this point, I feel. Did anyone else get any snow today with me?
No snow here.
Norma always looks like she's on the set of a movie in her sunroom. Oh, thank you for clarifying the temperature in Washington. Oh, Laura, you're here with me in Michigan. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm very happy I have a fellow Michigander here. Okay, Kip too. Okay, we'll give everyone just another minute to get started. I know that we have some great content for the hour. Just wanted to share a reminder that if anyone is looking for certification for contact hours, please feel free to shoot me a note after this, and we'll be sure to get you that verification. Go blue? Yes, absolutely. Or go green, go white. I go either way. I went to college in Ohio, so sunny slow. I'm learning a lot of new acronyms today.
So Victor from Spokane, Washington will appreciate this. A Federal Express driver asked me if I'd ever heard of Yakima, Washington. And I said, I think you mean Yakima, but yeah, I have heard of it. So
what's the spelling, Darren?
It's Yakima, Yakima, Native American term. It's next to Spokane. Yeah.
Spokane, I love it.
Mm.
80
Jess, it looks like
degrees.
someone's asking for your email in the chat.
I just shared it. Let me.
Okay.
It looks like I sent it as a private message by mistake. So I will let everyone know my email is Jess, Jess, at procurated.com. And I'll ping that to everyone as well.
And I copy Jess on most of my emails, so she'll appreciate it.
I try to be on as many people's emails as possible. In general, if y'all just want to start shooting me whatever interesting content you have, I'd love it. Pile of snow. Oh boy. Okay, I think we have a great number of attendees. Darren, how do you feel about getting started here?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
Excited. Okay. Well, very happy to be hosting this webinar, Roundtable, a sustainable procurement topic, something I think that's top of mind for many of us. So I'm really excited to join the panelists that we brought in today. And just as a reminder, we're the Procurement Insight Network, or what we refer to as PIN, a community of professionals. We believe in procurement together. So that's kind of our theme. And share with you just quickly our agenda for our webinar. Again, welcome to everyone from across the country. Really excited to have your participation. We're going to introduce our panelists, talk about some challenges and opportunities. That's part of procurement these days, definitely part of sustainable procurement. Then we're going to talk specifically about supplier performance measurement. I'm going to show you a couple of tools, including one that I think is one of the best out there, and that's, you'll hear a little bit more about EcoVadis. Some trends we'll talk about, public sector performance, how we're stacking up, small business and the key role that they play in the sustainability discussion. And Jess, we really want to welcome questions and discussion throughout. So Jess and we'll be monitoring the chat, and along with Steve. If you have a question at any time, drop it in the chat. Don't need to wait till the end by any means. So, distinguished panelists, first of all, Sean is from Multnomah County, Oregon. That is a leading player in sustainable procurement and in public procurement. A lot of cool things going on at the county. I encourage you to check out their website if you're looking for something to do or improve upon in your own procurement operation. Sean is the Sustainable Procurement Coordinator. So welcome, Sean.
Thank you.
And then we're also very happy to have Michael McMahon with us. He's an account executive with EcoVadis, a leading provider of supplier rating system for sustainability. And we'll drill down into that just a little bit. And it's a system that I use, Michael, and I really think highly of it. So Michael, you're from the Bay Area?
No, thanks, Darren. Yeah, I'm actually down in San Clemente, California, so Southern California. I would normally say sunny, but today it's a bit cloudy, I guess, and overcast. But I appreciate you having me, and I'm excited for today's discussion.
Great. So EcoVadis is headquartered in Paris. Now, there is a Paris, Texas, and a Paris, France. It is the latter, although I think I've been to both, and I like them both. They both have a lot to offer. So a company out of Paris have branched out internationally. They're really a global leader in this space. And my name is Darren Matthews. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I'm actually retired from the Portland area where Sean is at. I used to work for the county and other agencies there. But Sean, I didn't do very good at retirement, so I went back to work. What can I say?
Encore career.
I really appreciate the opportunity to work here for the CSU system at our San Luis Obispo campus. So first of all, let's talk about sustainability. We all know it's more than environmental, although we focus on that area, and I think that's great. I don't really have any issue with that. But really, when we're talking about sustainability, we're meeting the needs of current generations, so what our organizations and our communities need today, but doing so without compromising the ability of future generations, maybe our own kids, our own students, to meet their own needs. So that's kind of a generally accepted definition of sustainability. And just a reminder, the three legs to the stool, or the three pillars, are environmental, social, and economic. So Sean, I just wanted to start with you, get some of your thoughts from up in the Portland, Oregon area. What do you see as some challenges with implementing sustainable procurement strategies?
Stakeholder engagement and getting everyone involved is one of our big focuses. And that's because we are shifting away from and have shifted away from just like environmental stewardship is the goal, but really seeing that we're moving towards the deep inner connections between people and our environment and our social structures and institutions, and giving everyone a voice in our processes, and having not everyone in our supply chain be able to say, this is what we need to participate in procurement. And also we want to have positive impacts when we actually go to contract with the supplier, and we want positive impacts throughout the supply chain. And that's a very difficult thing to wrap our heads around, especially when we're buying goods from like across the globe. So what we have done is to gather all of this information is we've been really relying on electronic systems and building an electronic environment where all the procurement analysts at the county can participate, and also having our local suppliers as well as our global suppliers come to our portal, our supplier portal, and talk to us about what they want and what they need, so that we can start to work on these larger issues in the supply chain. We want everyone to have a voice in how we build our procurements and then how we contract with everyone. So I think that's the biggest barrier. And then building a system where we're always checking in with each other, and that it takes a lot of work to do this.
For sure, for sure. Can you share a strategy at the county that you've implemented lately? I'm thinking of like, you guys do a lot of good work in furniture, paper.
Yes, I'll put a link in the chat. We have been working really hard on improving our services and bringing sustainability into everything we do. And we looked at our human services. We buy so many human services. We contract for this. And so we developed with our Office of Diversity and Equity and our Office of Sustainability some guidance on contracts for culturally specific services. And to do that, we worked with all the stakeholders. We do the community-based, with our community-based organizations, we worked with them on what is culturally specific. What is that to you? And then we put all of their recommendations into our e-procurement system, which when our procurement analysts go to contract some service by commodity code, these recommendations come up into the sourcing event or the bid or the proposal, and then we're able to tailor them going back and forth in a system and negotiate what should those questions be in when we go on the street with the procurement. And then we take those responses, and however, when we award, those responses are brought into the negotiation. So we're able to track it from how it's developed in the procurement, how it was responded to, and then negotiate specific targets for that specific supplier. So I'll give you an example. If it's a very large supplier, we might be saying, well, you have a LEED certified building. Great. Are you maintaining that building? Are you bringing in any fleets for electronic vehicles? Because they're a very large community-based organization. If it's a very small community-based organization, the targets might be, are you using green cleaners? Are you using local businesses to purchase your catering? So we tailor the procurement to the supplier that we're contracting with.
Okay. I like that a lot. And I think you've talked about, overcoming the challenges with communication, stakeholder input, which I agree is so important. Just out of curiosity, Sean, do you find your stakeholders more challenging to work with and convince, if you will, or our suppliers?
I find that our suppliers are very easy to work with, and they're eager to share what they're doing for sustainability. But another one of the barriers is language. We don't all have the same language. So I'm working with a community-based organization. They were telling me all these things that they were doing around sustainability, but they didn't have the same language we were using at the county. We were using very procurement speak, like life cycle costing and, LCAs. We want to know what you're doing for life cycle analysis. And they were like, oh, we don't know what that means. But they were doing that type of work. But how do you get the same language and how do you use it all? And so we've created dictionaries and libraries and put them out online. And we also reference in a lot of our sourcing events or bids, we might point to like the National Institute of Government Procurement's library saying, this is what we mean by this. So that we're all on the same page with our language.
Okay, I think that's important. We do have our own language in procurement, that's for sure. So Michael, any thoughts you would add on working with suppliers, with implementing strategies or process improvements? I know we'll talk more about the system and how you rate them. Any challenges that you've faced?
Yeah, and thanks. Those are all great points too. And I kind of what we see, because we're on a global scale as well, and like working with multiple industries across kind of different sectors and kind of a wider range. On the supply base, it's that communication and also having that stakeholder buy-in. I know that was something that came up. That's having that stakeholder is very important on our side, right? Just knowing that these improvements are being driven through the supply chain. And then cascading that information to suppliers, because ultimately you want to keep your same suppliers. You want to see improvements. You want to see improvements from them, right? And we'll touch more on that later. And that's our goal ultimately, is to drive that sustainability goal throughout the supply chain, and then have it, reciprocate on your end as a business or an organization, with your KPIs and keeping that relationship alive. So those are all great points, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one thing I will share with all of us here on the line today, I love the stakeholder engagement. Sometimes I found that whether it's technology or sustainability with a policy or practice, going after the challenging customers first, then the rest seem a lot easier. That's just my take, Sean. So we'll talk more specifically about measurements and areas to measure. So Sean, in your opinion, what areas should an organization measure supplier performance?
I find that it is great to measure two parts. It's always good to ask about their business operations. So what are they doing? If it's even small or large, like what are you doing to maintain the services there? So are you buying a really easy win is what is your technology? Are you buying computer equipment has an EPEAT certification? Are you, because everyone needs technology. So that's a really easy thing, low hanging fruit to ask about, is the technology and the business operations. And then when you flip over to what are they providing for your goods or services, asking them specific questions about the service delivery. So focusing on what they actually provide for you and asking some questions tailored towards that. So if they're bringing goods to your organization, like do you have route optimization? Do you buy local? How are you employing people locally to provide this good or service?
And Sean, you want to talk a little bit about the EPEAT certification? So
Sure.
we talked about our terminology. I think a lot of us know. Go ahead.
So EPEAT is a certification program from a nonprofit here locally in Oregon, but they provide a certification globally. And what they do is they rate all technology with a gold, silver, or bronze. And so they take a lot of criteria. And if you are gold certified, it means you meet 90% of the criteria that's listed on their website right now. If it's silver, you meet 80%, and if it's bronze, it's 70% of everything they asked. So a great example of a question we might ask, whether it's a contractor that's just providing training services for us, we might say, what is your technology? Please go look it up on this website and see where your technology is certified. And then when you contract with us, please make sure that you go from bronze to silver or silver to gold. And so that's for like a small individual contractor that might just be doing, counseling or gang youth violence services to a small group of people. And then for the larger organizations, it's like, well, you're doing huge procurements of technology. We want you to make sure you always buy gold certified EPEAT, meaning that that the technology you're buying is hitting at least 90% of all these sustainability goals that have been vetted. So that's just the use of one certification for electronics, and it's one that we use a lot here because it's so broad, and they've covered a lot, everything from the cell phones to printers to computers, and they have a very long list of things they've rated, and it's easy to use.
Yeah, I like it as well. I was speaking with a student group recently, and they asked what I meant by EPEAT, and many of them had Dell laptop computers. I said, well, you're already participating in the certification because all of those are gold certified if you buy from Dell.
That is true. And Dell is also experimenting with some mushroom packaging. So instead of using traditional styrofoam, a styrofoam that's biodegradable.
Okay, interesting. I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah.
So just in the area of supplier performance and what are we measuring, I just want to share a case study that we used when I was at University of California, Santa Cruz. And this is percentage of green cleaners. And specifically, we asked for Green Seal, which is another third-party certification that you can take to the bank. And we actually, the supplier provided this reporting at our request on a monthly basis. And then annually, we would use their charts and graphs in our newsletters. So this is just one example.
I have an example of a green cleaner project at the jail.
Yes, hear about it.
So our contractor for food service there, we challenged them to always buy green cleaners, and we gave them all the criteria, and we said, we like Green Circle certified, we like EPA safer choice. And so, about 3 months into the contract, we had a check-in. And again, this goes back to stakeholder engagement and constant communication. We said, please provide us lists of what you purchased. And they provided us a list of what they purchased with a note that said, we purchased wrong. We have learned some lessons.
Okay.
they were greenwashed. So it's in
greenwash while you're incarcerated. That is, wow.
No.
I love the story. They weren't incarcerated?
No, it was kitchen services. So,
okay.
they're trying to buy green cleaners. They were trying to buy green cleaners for the kitchen area, and they learned the hard way about greenwashing. So, and we took that as a lesson learned. Hey, you reported it. That's great. Now we want to help you buy better. And so, but we had to come up with a mitigation strategy on how to use all these things that they had purchased. So that the lesson learned was it's better to have people report and have a lessons learned, and that how are you going to do this better in the future?
Yeah, great story, Sean, and great opportunity to learn and to educate your customers. Now, you mentioned greenwashing. That is a trend that I continue to see in California. And when we talk about greenwashing, we're really referring to a supplier or manufacturer that does a great job of marketing how green their product is, even if it really is not. And their self-certified product is green or natural or organic, but it doesn't have a third-party bona fide certification like a Green Seal or an EPEAT. So, Sean, are you continuing to see that trend?
I am continuing to see that trend, and we're spending a lot of time in our e-procurement system in providing specific labels that we approve, and we have a list out on our public website, but we're also embedding those in our e-procurement system. But we're not just staying with them, we're always trying to vet in new ones. But there is a website called I can share it in the link. It's called the Eco Label Index, and it lists all the current certifications out there. And then you have to dive deeper and actually read how they're certified. But it is a great index to reference when you're trying to figure out, am I being greenwashed or not?
Yeah, put that in the chat, and I encourage you all to check it out. Maybe bookmark that, and if you encounter something in your purchasing lives, you can check to see if it really is a green product. So, Michael, from your standpoint, what trends are you seeing, whether it's in the U.S. or abroad?
Sorry, I was on mute. Obviously, greenwashing is something we run into quite often. I mean, it's definitely a hot topic because
Right.
to get their positive marketing right, they don't want to have a bad image of themselves. And I mean, we're seeing a lot of financial aspects, and there's a lot of due diligence regulations that are coming out globally. I know Germany, Canada, I know the US are passing some more. So there's a lot of financial implications as well, whether it be, cost of capital. We see a lot of that. Also, just the new generation, the way people buy things, working a lot in the retail space, the way people purchase from manufacturers, it makes a huge deal. So just in general, just the scale of sustainability is relatively new. Several years back, I want to say the European markets may be a little farther ahead, but the US is like quickly catching up, and it's only going to continue to grow, right? It's not going to be going away. It's definitely a trend that's in the news, and it's becoming more, I want to say popular, but it's definitely more front of view, which is a good thing, right? Because ultimately we want to create a better planet and, better business practices and things like that. So, and also she mentioned technology. Technology is huge, right? Obviously tech is everywhere. Leveraging technology, love it or hate it, right? I sell technology, but I still have Post-it notes on my desk, right? But it's there to make our lives easier. And a lot of times with procurement and sustainability and kind of intertwining those, it can be very vast and complex and confusing, right? It's a very kind of daunting task. So I think anytime you can insert technology and assistance, it's always helpful in that regard.
Agreed on the technology. So Michael, you mentioned kind of consumers today, and I think, current generation, future generations and their buying patterns and habits. You made me think of a student group I encountered here on campus. They made a pitch to leadership, including myself and our bookstore, on garment sourcing practices. And this student group was very much concerned with, not so much with price, not the cheapest thing. They wanted a garment that was sourced and rated in a sustainable fashion. And they told us they were willing to have fewer clothes if they were the right clothes from the right source. And I think that type of thinking, that's just one area of sustainability, of course, but I think we're seeing more and more of that type of thinking.
No, 100%. And we see it on our end, like I said, just working with different companies and kind of just in conversations we have with them, right? It's not always a cost, or there's that buyer, it's ultimately very important. And especially for the newer generation, it becomes the way of kind of a normal, which is a good normal, right? So
Right.
It's definitely a step in the right direction.
Agreed. Yeah, they took the suppliers that the university was using in our bookstore, student store, and rated them. And it wasn't a great report card, but you know what? They did a great job presenting their case. So we made some changes. So, Sean, any other trends or hope for the future that you're seeing in the Pacific Northwest?
Yes, we are looking more at looking at forced labor and trying to eliminate that from the supply chain, and really seeing that as a way to alleviate a lot of negative social impacts and negative environmental impacts. A great example is like how healthcare products are produced, like nitrile gloves. They a lot of them are made in forced labor factories throughout the world. And like pre-pandemic, it was costing like 25 cents for a pair of nitrile gloves, the ones we use for safety all of the time. After pandemic, it's about 58 cents per glove. And now if we had no forced labor with those gloves, it'd be over $1 a pair. So, I mean, this is a needed healthcare safety item. And so us eliminating forced labor from that supply chain would be absolutely fantastic. And there's a lot of strategies around there about making these gloves better, but without anybody asking the question. We need to start with asking the questions like, where are these gloves made? Where are these healthcare products made? Where are these products made? so that we can tell the supply chain we don't want forced labor anymore. And really right now we're in a place where we just need to start asking the questions. But I think we need to get to the place where we start not purchasing from forced labor.
Okay, I think that's a great idea, Sean, a great start. And I totally agree. We do need to ask these questions. Okay, let's take a quick audience poll, Jess. Just curious, does your organization have a sustainable procurement policy? Feel free to drop a yes or a no or any other reply in the chat.
In the meantime, Darren, we did have a question. Is there a list of products at risk of forced labor or any resources that might be helpful?
I might need to do a little research for that. Sean, is there anything that comes to mind, or you, Michael?
Right now, if the federal government does have a few embargoes, and you can go to the GSA website, and I would have to go look it up, but they do have embargoes on a few companies out there that have forced labor, and it's specifically because of forced labor.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for the question. Getting some chats responses now. Alan says no. Terry, no. Denise as well. Hello, Denise. No, we do not. Great opportunities out there. And this is one of the things, Sean, that I really enjoy in public procurement in general. We all share our contracts and our standard terms and our RFPs. So let's share our sustainable procurement policies. I'm going to just shout out to Multnomah County again, who has a really robust policy on their website. Currently, the CSU system does have one. We're actually revamping it, and we're looking at other best practices. So even though we have one, I'm in the boat with many of you that I need to work on redrafting. Some other responses in the chat. Nicole notes, environmentally preferred products program that includes sustainability measures. That's great. That's great to hear. Thank you for weighing in on our question. Okay, we'll talk some more about trends in sustainable procurement, and I'm going to let Michael talk a little bit about his company, EcoVadis, and their supplier assessment, I'll call it. And so, first of all, Michael, what sectors does EcoVadis evaluate?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So we cover a pretty vast amount, I guess you could say. So we work across a large amount of sectors and global companies and of all sizes, right? So all the way from the smallest to the very large enterprise corporations. So public sector, education, which I'm in direct response for, manufacturing, finance, retail, food and beverage, oil and gas, tech, services. I mean, that's just a few. It's a pretty wide range, which is nice because you get a big scope, and a lot of suppliers share. Obviously, they're shared amongst different organizations and business units. So in all of those kind of have their own, kind of nuances and struggles that kind of differentiates those segments too. Like I work in automotive as well. So like they're big on like conflict minerals is a major hot point, right? Or obviously someone in services is more office supplies or things like that. It's just, it's dependent on different kind of aspects of that. So pretty wide range of customers we work with.
Very nice. Very nice. This is one of those questions, be careful what you ask for. So I've worked in the public sector for many years, including public higher education. So Michael, how do you think the public sector stacks up against retail, automotive, and some of these others you've talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall pretty well, right? Pretty well. I mean, like most organizations, right? Public sector entities are, the biggest things, everyone's kind of in a different stage, right? That different stage of their sustainable procurement journey. And I always call it a journey too, and I'll touch more on that. It's just, most public sector organizations are coming in contact with, kind of the need for a sustainable approach, but, maybe don't always have a program in place, or, many have been tackling kind of on their own, right? They've been kind of taking it upon themselves, or may not have that team or the bandwidth to kind of kick off a successful program. As I mentioned, it can be kind of daunting, right? If you're looking from the ground floor. It really comes down to kind of change management, that change management piece, and kind of guiding a program from an idea to completion. I've mentioned stakeholders, always a big part of it as well. But yeah, I think overall pretty well.
Good to hear. Good to hear. one of the things that I've done, and I've been on both sides of this, with and without a sustainable procurement policy in the public sector. So when you have a robust policy, you kind of have some teeth, if you will, to your program. But even if you have a section of your procurement website that has resources like the EPA or state programs for recycled products, or other organizations like EP, the third party systems that you were talking about, Sean. I think if we could do that as a first step, that would sure be cool. And I have done that without having a policy, and it definitely gets the word out for some good practices. So I'm also going to ask you, Michael, to talk a little bit about your methodology. Now, just a note to the audience, I have used the EcoVadis system under contract to rate suppliers in partnership with EcoVadis, and also some of my classes, university classes in California, we talk about this methodology. So Michael, can you tell us what we're taking a look at here now?
Yeah, no, for sure. I appreciate it, Darren. So kind of high level, as Darren had mentioned, kind of what we do is like, we really help kind of organizations and corporations kind of build out robust sustainability programs, regardless of kind of where they are in that journey. So where we start from that kind of our guiding principles, or our guiding framework, you could say, right? That's what our assessments are based on, our scorecards, and that's our methodology. So our methodology focuses on, sustainable priorities, and it's aligned with global standards, right? So it's aligned, ISO 2600, SASB, UN Global Compact, just to name a few global reporting initiatives. So these are tried and true, aspects that we base these on. So, you can see the 4 different themes. So there's environmental, labor and human rights, ethics, sustainable procurement. So when we're looking at environment, so that's looking at the environmental footprint, along with, product sustainability and, customer health and safety, biodiversity, product use, water consumption, things of that nature. So next is the labor and human rights portion of that. So this is focused on employee working conditions, diversity and discrimination, that child and forced labor, as we spoke of earlier. And Sean had mentioned, like, if there's a way to kind of ask the suppliers, like, how are they doing this? This is how we kind of tackle that. So all those human rights issues, the ethics theme, that's looking at corruption, fraud, other conflicts of interest, all that those types of items. Then lastly is that sustainable procurement. So we're looking at sustainable procurement practices of suppliers, and those practices involved with that. So it's important. I mean, it's just it's our kind of our grassroots where all of our scorecards lie in that process.
And I like the methodology here, Michael. I like that sustainable procurement is prominent in there. And then I would guess, for me, I put kind of ethics and sustainable procurement, definitely something that everyone on this webinar deals with every day. When you talk about public procurement is highly ethical. We make sure that our practices are competitive, not anti-competitive. We know the Sherman Antitrust Act, and to stay on the good side of that. So good stuff. Good stuff. I also wanted to share a supplier management tool that you may be familiar with. You can see the websites down here at the link, Procurated. And this is from Waxy, which is actually the supplier that provided the green cleaner information that I shared earlier. And this is just a rating system. So if I'm looking at supplier performance, I want good customer service, value, the things that go into this rating system. And if I had an ideal world in procurement, if I were king for a day, I think I would use the Procurated and EcoVadis platforms in tandem for my suppliers. Sean, is that too much to ask?
No. And I really like the system because you can celebrate the successes and you can see what people are doing really well and encourage it, but then also look at the places where they need to improve and help them. This is important to us. Please improve on this.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see, Terry, I appreciate the question here. Michael and Sean, if you want to take a look at this, assume that local governmental agencies vary, absolutely, in which of the bullet points you list that they implemented based on their own reality and culture. I think that's very true. And I think that's not just true, Michael, across the US, but definitely across the globe.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's every organization's a bit different, as I think I mentioned earlier. It's just, and that's kind of the aspect of it. It's very catered to kind of who, who that organization is, what their priorities are, and what they're trying to focus on, and then reaching out to the supply base or to get the relevant data back, in the aspect that, in the reflection that you need it. So that's very true, just to have that broad kind of scope of this. So absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about corporate social responsibility, CSR. This term has been around for a long time. So Michael, in your experience, what areas do organizations struggle with CSR?
Yeah, I know we talked about the new things, right? What's happening now.
Yeah.
Carbon comes up on a daily basis. Carbon's very predominant in a lot of the conversations I have. So a lot of organizations are trying to, get a handle on their GHGs or greenhouse gases. And that's really been at the forefront of a lot of their needs or struggles. Many have goals in place already, right? So such as net zero targets, the 2030 climate action plan, that one's in Europe. I know Biden called for a 50 to 52% reduction in GHGs by, I want to say, 2030. So, and kind of with all these carbon challenges, people face, generally the most difficult ones are scope 3s, right? The transportation one, just those emissions. So, and it can be kind of challenging to gain proper data to not only, know where you stand, but to also make changes, right? We talked about making those changes. That's ultimately what we want to do, is make changes and being able to have actionable data to back that up. So reducing that carbon footprint and, allowing accurate reporting as well. You can never have too many reports as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I appreciate that. Sean, anything you would add with the corporate social responsibility? Some people say this is about companies doing the right thing, if there's such a thing. I'm interested in your thoughts, Sean.
Yeah, so in public procurement, we are really driven by what our stakeholders want, which is a lot of times the general public and also elected officials. So really trying to prioritize what people want, reaching out to them and asking them what they want, and then highlighting it in meeting and telling our suppliers, this is what we want to see. This is important to our county culture. This is important to our stakeholders. And I guess I'm really fortunate to be in a place that values reaching out and getting feedback from everyone. And there's a lot of public ways we do that. And so even in this new world of like post-COVID, I'm seeing a lot of really great ways we're still using technology to connect with people. It used to be such a barrier to come into like the general administration building, but now we do a lot of webinars, we do a lot of polls, and people are participating more and more, which is great. And we're also getting a lot of collaboration from our smaller agencies out there. So if we're having a public meeting, we're having like jurisdictions way out in Oregon attending. So we just have a larger audience and we're able to connect more.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits. And you mentioned the pandemic. That was kind of the silver lining for me, is the collaboration and at times maybe a forced collaboration and adoption of technology, which I think are both really good things. And we can continue on, the place that we're at now as a world and a country with the pandemic. Is it post-pandemic? That's what everyone's saying, or at least that's the rumor, as they say. But anyway, I think we can keep a lot of the good things and some of the others we can do without. I'll just leave it at that. So Nicole has a great question. Let's take a look at the chat. Is anyone incorporating social cost of carbon considerations in public procurement? Great question. Sean, are you aware of any of this?
I believe that we are incorporating the social costs. We're constantly trying to find measures, but unfortunately, it's not always numbers, it's stories. It's that, qualitative versus quantitative. So the social costs is we're always trying to, like, a great example is we're always trying to hire locally and then highlight that story and like show how hiring locally really has helped the local economy and cut down on the carbon footprint.
Yeah, I think this is a great topic. In fact, Jess, this could be a great topic for a future webinar. I love it.
Yeah.
Definitely an area of research. If you're interested, there's a lot of good material out there, articles on this topic and the social costs. And what you're talking about, Sean, the impact to our local communities, our local economies, and part of that is buying local, which some consider the social component, economic component of sustainability. And if you have a local preference or not, but if you do provide opportunities and your local suppliers earn those, it's not just the $12,000 contract, it's the local jobs, the local taxes, the discretionary spending by the employees of your local supplier. I've always been a huge fan.
Yeah, and I go to a lot of stakeholder events. Like we're working closely with the Oregon Minority Entrepreneurs Association, and trying to see how they can each foster each other's businesses. So if they're a small business, how can they utilize another small business? You know, how can we continue to create these ties between each other?
Yeah, that type of partnering I think is so valuable, and what we're seeing more and more of, definitely here in the Central Coast of California. I saw a lot of it in Portland with OAMI, the organization you're referring to, and some great partnerships there. So real cool stuff going on. Okay, we talked a little bit, Michael, about small and diverse businesses, which many of our organizations are focused on. And many of these, by the way, are local. So you can kind of do a lot of good things with our procurement. This is just one of them. So a question I'll pose to you is, what can small businesses do to compete with these large corporations? You know, I'm just a local supplier. I'm not Johnson & Johnson. What can I do?
Yeah, and that's a great question too. And it's something we spend a lot of time on too, right? So I mean, I almost say like the success of the business or the organization shouldn't really be dictated by size either, right? Just more of the importance of those, practices kind of within that organization. So, as you might kind of expect, our most successful kind of sustainable business partners, kind of recognize that need for, sustainable process, at that executive level, as we spoke about, and then kind of travels throughout that organization. So it's this mentality that in buy-in that cascades on through the teams, regardless of size, and kind of drives improvements. So I'm kind of with that, kind of a few tips. I think one would be like just analyzing your current process, right? Or maybe a lack thereof, right? Back that journey, just starting that journey. Two would be, I would say, setting goals, right? Benchmarks, setting dates, kind of dates for completion or improvement. Three, staff training, ensure your teams are being, properly trained, just based on that rapidly changing landscape of sustainability, procurement, and kind of just operational implications of, a lot of these initiatives. This continuous training it needs to be kind of embedded in your culture, and kind of ensures that your team, kind of regardless of size, is prepared to adapt to those changes. And then for four, I would say, be proactive, right? Versus reactive, realizing that, this is a journey for your organization kind of regardless of, where you are in that process. It's important that, this is something you're moving towards, and because it's going to continue to move forward in whether you're essentially ready for it or not. So I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your perspectives. I've had a lot of good fortune working with small and diverse businesses that have done many of the things that you're talking about, Michael. They're deliver at a high level. And like you said, if you're getting the goods and services that are quality at a competitive price, why should I care that they're a, 3-person company or 300,000, but I think there's a good balance. Obviously we do business, in my university system with a lot of major corporations, but also a lot of small and local businesses that I think do leverage, the role in the community, that maybe their pricing is more competitive for them. It's very common for a small and diverse business to bring, in my experience, a higher level of service and touch, service after the sale included. So Sean, I'd be interested in anything you might want to add on this topic.
Yeah, so we've been really looking at a lot of our smaller, diverse businesses, our minority-owned businesses, and looking at their products and trying to streamline that process. How do they get more clients? And we've seen some success in them partnering like with Amazon or other online catalog processors, because a lot of the small businesses don't have the shipping. They don't have maybe the warehousing for a lot of these things, but like like Amazon has like a Black Business Accelerator and a Small Business Accelerator program where they give grants and they try to help them figure out, can we put your product in this catalog, and then not only help them do that and scale up their business to do so, but then their products are in a huge catalog and they have a larger audience and they have an infrastructure to keep building the business. And that's what we want to see. We want to go you from being an emerging small business to being that medium-sized business.
Yep.
So I've seen a lot of success with that. And I do know that, and I'm not endorsing Amazon, but they do have a Black Business Accelerator and they're starting a Latino Business Accelerator in the next month or two. And they've been talking about it in public platforms like OWAMI and also at the Hispanic Chamber conference I just went to. So there are opportunities out there, and it's just oftentimes going to those large catalogs and finding if you can get your product in there.
Yeah, I love to hear about those opportunities and partnerships, kind of a win-win arrangement. So Michael, this is some more information I took from EcoVadis and kind of rating the small business performance. And this is actually across the world, small and medium-sized businesses, some may call these SMEs, or versus large corporations. Can you kind of let us know what we're looking at here?
Yeah, no, for sure. I like the SME. The SME is very good. I enjoyed that. So as you know, as we're looking at this graph, and an organization, I'm kind of back to the journey aspect of things, right? So this is a clear form of that, of exactly that. So, it's not only, ultimately not just like only making a supplier, like doing an assessment of the supplier, but ultimately wanting to make them better and make them improve or have them improve, right? And just increasing the world as a whole. So that's what this is showcasing. It's just, this is a very important factor because, ultimately, we're assessing those companies, for that main reason to make improvements. So the most vital piece of that is to, not only provide a rating or a scorecard or, how they did, but also providing like a corrective action plan as we do, to continue to grow that performance, right? We don't want to just give you you failed or, you got a 50 or whatever the case may be. We want to make those improvements, right? Because it's a process, right? So kind of just to back up a bit on that too, globally, kind of EcoVadis as a whole, we have over 100,000 suppliers in our network. So, but about 70 to 80% of those are relatively small suppliers globally, right? So, and we have also seen a lot of suppliers have, kind of struggled on that first assessment. So, and that's it could be common, right? So, but as you can kind of see in the slide, you're looking at like 50 to 60% are actively improving on their sustainability practices. And ultimately that's the goal, right? Is they are making improvements. You want the green, you want them to be making improvements. Granted, there's always some outliers and things like that, but just the aspect of it being being a process, is being something that you're actively working towards and giving them the steps and the kind of advice to make some of those changes in their organization.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know that in working with your platform and then also working with my own suppliers when I was at the UC system, that type of feedback, it's like I'm identifying areas for improvement. I don't feel like I'm busted because I got a 62. It's like, hey, here's some areas, opportunities. It's like you don't call it, when you meet with an employee, you don't say these are weak areas. You say, hey, here are areas for opportunity and development. And so that's one of the things that I do like about it, and I do appreciate. Okay, let's going to put everyone on the spot here. If you're so willing, could you share with us in the chat, are there areas of sustainable procurement that your agency might improve upon? I know for me, Jess, this would be a yes. Got a list of things now I've, with my procurement team that we've developed, things that we want to do in the coming year in sustainable procurement. So Sean, how about your answer to this question?
We are working on I would call it our little SOAR area, which is how can we write obligations that are managed in our departments? So we are trying to reach out to those stakeholders and the program managers. Us in procurement, we've learned our tools. We know how our e-procurement tool works, but we're embarking on that getting the contract obligations assigned to the right program managers out there in departments and having them manage their contracts. So that when there is a problem, or maybe there isn't a problem, we can start measuring it. Are all the invoices and the shipping stuff, is it all coming in correctly, and getting them to use our system. So we're working on that training piece and how to write those obligations.
Yeah, I think the training is definitely an area we're looking to shore up here at Cal Poly. And then, so this question is really just self-reflection for all of us. If you one takeaway, if you will, from our webinar, if there are areas that you could develop and work upon, reaching out to any of us here on the panel or at Penn and work together on this. So Sean, the one university class I teach now that I have a job again is that my part-time job as a faculty member is sustainable procurement strategies. And it's just amazing the ideas that come from all ages of students, whether it's in our personal or professional lives, those little things we can do that do make a difference that we can improve upon. And I'm just speaking for myself here. I feel like there's always areas for improvement for me.
Darren, I had a question. Given that a number of our attendees mentioned that they don't currently have a sustainability program in their organization, is there how would you start if you're going from zero to nothing, Sean and Michael and Darren?
Zero to nothing.
Or I'm sorry, if you're going to zero to something, going to zero to nothing, easy.
No, I've done that too. But I think a great start is looking at what your peers like in NIGP or the Penn Network, what others are doing, looking at policies there, and also kind of get back to Terry's point, what is feasible and practical for my organization. Maybe it's a smaller policy, maybe it just deals with paper or electronic equipment that is EPEAT certified. Or green seal cleaners. There's some quick wins, I believe, without revamping and reinventing the wheel and going through major legislation. At least that's my take. Sean, your thoughts on an organization that's starting from ground level?
Yeah, I would also suggest some low-hanging fruit of writing even in your boilerplate that you want to use these certain eco labels and certifications. Like, this is a requirement, and asking the yes or no question of like, yes or no, are you willing to buy from these areas in your business operations or in service delivery? And then that's a really easy way to say yes or no, you're willing to do it, and great, then you can write a contract obligation for it.
Yeah, I like that. And one of the other things I've seen, Jess, is this can be an area that's tough to mandate. So if you develop a policy or language in your bids or RFPs that have a lot of must and shall, try some, when feasible, when practical, to the extent possible, and start off with those types of steps. I really, and this is kind of a higher education norm when we're trying to affect change, is we motivate rather than mandate, and that includes sustainability. I think that works best for me. So
I think also we've seen some wins with writing it at like putting a dollar amount on it, saying at $50,000 of spend, like us as an organization have given you, the supplier, $50,000 of business. Now we want to sit down and negotiate some sustainability targets. So some goodwill in that. Yeah, now we want to see you green your fleet. What is your plan to green your fleet now that we're in business with you? We have 4 years left on this contract. Let's talk about you greening your fleet now and putting in targets for the next 4 years. And you have a contract with us, so you're going to have something coming in.
Yeah, no, those are great discussions. I love that. Well, we appreciate everyone's questions to date in the chat. I'll pause just a second here. If there are any final questions before we wrap up our webinar, feel free to drop them in the chat. Not seeing any questions. You're welcome. Let's see. Hillary asks, do you have the link to the EP certifications? You're welcome, Nicole. Is there a link to that? Okay. Sean has her email there, and then you have the contact for all of us here. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's about sustainable procurement or anything else, even how your sports teams are doing in your area. I'm in addition to being a procurement geek, I'm a little geeky on sports too. So I'd love to hear from you for any reason. And I want to thank our panelists, Sean and Michael. Jess, thank you. And I think that's going to wrap it up.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll be sending a follow-up email to all attendees to make sure that you have all the links and resources from this meeting. We have another webinar coming up next month on supplier diversity, so we'll be sure to share that. If you all have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at jess@procurated.com. And if you have not already signed up to join the Procurement Insight Network and are involved in the procurement community, want to be a resource or learn from your peers, please go to procurementtogether.procurated.com. I'll send a note.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank
Take care.
you. Take care.